March 1974. World War II had ended 29 years ago. Peace and prosperity had spread everywhere. But on Lubang Island in the Philippines, deep inside a dense and terrifying jungle, a soldier was still fighting a war. His uniform was torn in many places, but his rifle and sword still shone. This man was none other than an intelligence officer of the Japanese Imperial Army, who was still fighting alone, 29 years after World War II had ended, fighting against American forces. Imagine, the entire world was celebrating peace. New cities were being built. People had forgotten the old wars. But this man, all alone, was fighting a war that had ended years ago. His name was Hiroo Onoda. For him, time had stopped in 1944. He believed that the enemy was still lying in ambush, and that if he left the jungle, he would be captured. But the question arises, how can any person be so insane? How can someone live for 29 years, alone, without any supplies or help, cut off from the world? For the world, World War II ended in 1945. But in reality, it ended in 1974. Because technically, until the last soldier surrenders, the war continues. Was this just a soldier's duty? Or was it his stubbornness that made him the very last prisoner of war of World War II? Welcome back to a LJM TV videos, dear curious fellows. Hiroo Onoda was born in 1922 in a small village in Japan. But this was not the Japan we know today for robots and technology. This was a Japan that dreamed of conquering the entire world. In Japan at that time, when a child took his first steps, he wasn't taught how to walk, he was taught how to die for his emperor. Onoda's childhood was not spent in games and sports, but under the shadow of strict discipline. An environment where the word surrender did not exist in the dictionary. Children were taught from a young age that death is better than surrendering after losing a war. Onoda was a product of this militarized environment. From childhood, he was taught that loyalty meant obeying every order of his commander as if it were a divine command. But what was that order that forced Onoda to fight World War II alone for 29 years? The year 1944. World War II was at its peak. Japan was fighting against America and its allies. The situation had become dire, and Japan was losing badly. But the Japanese high command played a final trick. They decided to create guerrilla soldiers who could silently enter enemy territory and cause destruction, to teach the Allied forces a lesson. Hiroo Onoda was among the few chosen soldiers sent to the Nakano Military School for guerrilla training. This was no ordinary military school. Onoda was trained extensively in intelligence, espionage, and hit-and-run tactics. He was taught how to survive alone in the jungle, set enemy supplies on fire, and exhaust an entire army through guerrilla warfare. But the most important instruction was the one his commander gave him. After training was complete, the commander looked Onoda in the eyes and said, "Under no circumstances are you to surrender. And remember, you are not allowed to commit suicide either. Whether it takes 3 years or 5, we will return. But until then, do not let the enemy sleep in peace." These words lit a fire inside Onoda that would not cool down for the next 29 years. For this mission, Onoda was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines. It is a small island, completely covered in dense jungle. From a military standpoint, it was very important for Japan because the supply routes of America and its allies passed through there. Hiroo Onoda, now an intelligence officer, had a very tough responsibility. Disrupt and destroy, launch sneak attacks on enemy supply lines, keep an eye on them, and turn every corner of the jungle into hell for the enemy. He had to remain on this mission until the Japanese Imperial Army came back to retrieve him, whether it took 5 years or 10 years. Onoda had been on Lubang Island for only a year when, in August 1945, the world saw the first use of nuclear weapons. America dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, shocking the entire world. After this attack, Japan officially surrendered. This was the turning point where World War II ended. The war ended, but on Lubang Island in the Philippines, there was no one to give Hiroo Onoda this news. He was still there, lying in ambush with his 3 companions, Akatsu, Shimada, and Kazuka. The Allied forces, who knew about the guerrillas on the island, dropped millions of leaflets that said, "Japan has surrendered. The war is over. Come down from the mountains." But when Onoda read this leaflet, he suspected it was a trick to trap him and his companions. Because he had been taught that the enemy is very cunning. He will try to mislead you by spreading false news. Only one thought was fixed in Onoda's mind. Until my commander comes back, my war will continue. This began a test of time that broke the limits of human endurance. For the next several years, Onoda and his companions roamed the island like ghosts. They had no roof over their heads, no rations to eat. Only the dense trees of the jungle and the wet ground were their home. To survive, they lived on raw bananas, coconuts, and sometimes rice stolen from the fields of local people. When hunger became unbearable, they would hunt a cow from the jungle, dry its meat in the sun, and make it last for months. But this wasn't just survival. Onoda, considering the local police and villagers as the enemy, attacked them several times. The cost of this lone war was very heavy. His companions were slowly losing courage. But because Onoda was their senior, they had to obey him. One by one, Onoda's companions left him. 1949, Akatsu surrendered. 1954, Shimada was killed in a police encounter. 1972. After the death of his last companion, Kazuka, Hiroo Onoda was left completely alone on the island. Lubang Island is sparsely populated, but the locals knew that Japanese guerrillas were hiding in the island's jungles. Onoda considered them enemy collaborators and attacked them in the darkness of night. Over 29 years, Onoda and his companions killed more than 30 local people and wounded over 100. The island police tried several times to catch him, but Onoda's guerrilla training was so intense that he would disappear repeatedly. The Philippine government also tried several times to convince him that the war was over. They dropped newspapers from the sky. They dropped letters and photographs of his family. They even broadcast the voice of his brother on a loudspeaker. But Onoda thought it was all an enemy conspiracy. He had become quite famous by now, but no one could see him. Some thought he had died. Others said his spirit now haunted the island. Strangely, where military squads and search missions failed, a 24-year-old Japanese boy named Norio Suzuki succeeded, without firing a single bullet. Norio Suzuki was not a soldier. He was just an adventure enthusiast. He had only 3 goals in life. First, to see a panda. Second, to see a yeti. And third, to find Hiroo Onoda. He set out to find Onoda in the jungles of Lubang and found him in just 4 days. On February 20, 1974, Norio Suzuki and Hiroo Onoda came face to face. At first, Onoda tried to shoot him, but Suzuki shouted his name in Japanese and said, "Onoda-san, the Emperor and the people of Japan are worried about you." Suzuki told him that Japan had become a great power, but Onoda had only one stubbornness. "I will only believe it when my commanding officer comes here and gives me the order." Suzuki understood that this war would not end with weapons, only with an order. Now the problem was, where was the commander who had given Onoda the guerrilla warfare order 29 years ago? No one knew. After many days, the Japanese government located that officer. He was now selling books to make a living. Major Taniguchi, that was the same officer who had given Onoda the order. After much planning, a special mission was arranged. Major Taniguchi was sent to Lubang Island to break the chain that he himself had bound 29 years earlier. When Onoda saw his old commander, he stood at attention and saluted. At that moment, his commander took out a piece of paper and read the words written on it aloud. The translation is, "Officer Onoda, Japan has lost. Your mission is now terminated. Surrender your sword and rifle to the enemy." Onoda had entered Lubang at the age of 22. He was now 52 years old. He had sacrificed his youth, his friends, and the best years of his life to a loyalty that, in the world's eyes, was nothing short of madness. When Onoda returned to Japan, he became a national hero. He expressed sorrow many times for the 30 people he had killed, thinking they were the enemy. But the Japan he had left 29 years ago, that Japan was gone. Now technology and Western culture ruled. He could not adjust to this new environment and left Japan the very next year for Brazil. In 1996, Onoda returned to the same island in the Philippines where he had lost his youth. He donated $10,000 to the local people and set up a scholarship fund to ease the pain of those whose elders he had unknowingly killed. He gave many interviews about this journey of his life and wrote openly about it in his book. But his story gained worldwide fame when, on January 16, 2014, at the age of 91, Hiroo Onoda passed away in Tokyo due to heart failure. Undoubtedly, Japan faced a terrible defeat in World War II. But Hiroo Onoda was perhaps the only soldier who won that war, but lost the war against time. We hope you liked this LJM TV video. Please like and share it. Thank you so much for your loving comments.